Okay, hello everybody. We're just going to give 1 second for people to make sure they can hear us, be able to join the meeting, and then we will go ahead and get started. Okay. All right, well, today's CentralCommand webinar is focused on online data access. And similar to previous winter webinars that we've done, we're going to have the presentation by Michael, and then we'll have time for Q&A afterwards. So just as some housekeeping announcements, this webinar is being recorded. The link to the recording will be emailed out post-event, and we'll also upload it to our YouTube so that you guys can share it out with anybody else that you feel like would benefit from the content that we present. For this call, all attendees are muted. Your cameras are off, so you don't have to worry about any interruptions. You can just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And of course, enter your questions into either the Q&A tab that Microsoft Teams provides or also the chat. We'll be watching both. I think on the Q&A chat, you can even mark if you want it to be an anonymous question if you're feeling a little shyer. But yeah, we're really excited to present this topic. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Michael because I'm sure he's got enough content to cover more than an hour. We'll make sure that he contains himself on online data access, kind of the function of web reporting in CentralCommand. So over to you, Michael Guiette, Director of Product Management here at Servita.
Thank you very much, Bailey. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Excuse me. Thank you for joining us today. If you didn't know, that was Bailey Berlanti.
Oh.
Sorry. So we are going to be talking about reporting today, data access through the Unit4 web portal. So your web access to reporting, to being able to set things up, whether you're working in the desktop today and want to publish something from there, or you're working in the web and you want to create something. So we're gonna talk a little bit about the web reporting. We're gonna talk about objects today. Objects are those element groupings of information that we're going to use to be able to create and publish reports via the Unit4 web portal. So we're going to do some understanding around what the objects are. Browsers. We have, for the past 20 years, 25 years, talked about browsers. And everybody in the desktop environment knows what a browser is. A browser is a way for us to configure within the CentralCommand environment or the Unit4 ERP environment, a view of information and how that information is displayed on the screen and what we can do with that information to publish it, to get it out there for our stakeholders to be able to use, whether it's a customer report that we're creating, whether it's an internal report, something we want to put on the dashboard, all of those things. When we talk about browsers in the desktop, we're going to be talking about reports in the web portal. So how do we create them in the web? We're going to be looking at that. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the desktop. We are going to look at existing browsers and what it takes for you to be able to publish something that you got created in the desktop application so that people who are using the web environment can have access to that. And then we're going to open it up for questions. So with that, we're going to drop into the demo environment. I'm going to share my screen here. And what you're going to see is I've already logged into my CentralCommand environment on the web. So if your IT team has not yet started to publish Unit4 ERP or CentralCommand on the web, this environment that we're looking at is the user-facing portal. Instead of having the desktop application that you go into an RDP or a remote desktop application, that you have a dashboard inside of another application that gives you access to see CentralCommand, this is a way to publish that same functionality but using a browser. So it allows us, without having to create or manage those different environments, this web portal gives us access to everything we need in CentralCommand. So where we want to start here today, we want to start with objects. An object in CentralCommand is a way for us to be able to see information within the Unit4 ERP environment and start to build our reporting environment on that. If you've gone into the CentralCommand desktop and you opened a browser and you've started to build a report from that environment, this is the same thing on the web. So we have to start with, if I look in CentralCommand, here we have to start with those different high-level inquiry screens. So an object within the web environment is the same as we're looking at the desktop as an inquiry screen. This is where it's going to give us the fields that we start with for building a report. So those users who have access to a role or part of a role within the Unit4 ERP environment, that role will be given all of the inquiry screen, the object screens within the web environment. So here, my user is attached to a role called CentralCommand. I have access to all of these different inquiry screens within the CentralCommand environment. This is what I'm going to use to start building our reports. Okay, so once I've gotten the permission, and I'm going to go ahead and close this off, I'm going to go into CentralCommand, and I'm going to go into this reports menu. Now, under this reports menu, we do have all of our standard reports. You know, those are the reports that you've seen in CentralCommand forever. So you've got your standard pre-published reports. You also have a shared folder, a private folder, and an across companies folder. And we're going to talk a little bit about each one of these when we go in and start looking at and creating a report. So when I create a new report, creating the new report, because I went into the CentralCommand menu, when I create a new report, it's going to take me to all of those objects that I have access to underneath the CentralCommand environment. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to look at my invoice items. This is if you think about it from a desktop perspective, we're talking about that transaction inquiry. Okay, so if I open this up, I want to explain this screen a little bit to you. In our terminology that we use today with regards to browsers, okay, we have our Setup tab in the browser. The Setup tab is located in the web. The Setup tab is located here at the bottom. It says, click here to add or remove columns to the table. So if I open this up, let me close that. Let me open this up. This is going to be able to give us the list of fields that are available for us from this object to pull information into our report. Now, obviously, the invoice items object starts with a number of fields where we have the code selected, excuse me, pre-selected within that object. So this is what the default out of the box, when you open the object up, this anything that has the check mark highlighted, this is what's going to be displayed in the columns across that report. Now, notice that as you have a need to add or remove things from this list, okay, if I come down to, so these are all of my general fields, right? So if I want to deselect the IATA number, I don't need to see the IATA number. So I can deselect it here. What it will do is it will remove it from this screen. So here you can see in the background, you can see how IATA number, when I open this object, IATA number is displayed here. When I deselect it and I click OK, now it automatically removed IATA number from my column list here at the bottom. So this is our setup tab. This is where we set up the report and define what columns do we want to be displayed in this report. Okay, so we're going to come back to more information here, but I want to start there, just describing what that setup tab was. Up here at the top, this is that middle tab in that browser. This is your search C tab, your search criteria tab. So in this case, we can say where the transaction date is, we can have a like, not like, a to date, a from date, between. So when we're looking at different dates, we can say where the from date is January 1st of this year. If I just now view the results, what I'm going to get is I'm going to get the 3 transactions, the 3 invoice items that I have within my date range that I selected. Okay, so I'm going to go back and change search criteria down here at the bottom. So when we're looking at this object and we're saying we wanted to create a new report, down here at the bottom, we have change search criteria. We can save this and put it into our shared menu. We can save as. So if we create one report and then we go in and modify it and we want to save it as a different name, not overwrite the original one, we can save as. Looking at the details, the analysis, we're going to go into these different buttons down here, especially the export button we're going to get to. Okay, so I'm going to go back in. I'm going to change search criteria. The reason why I can change search criteria now is maybe I want to change or add additional fields to be able to search by. Okay, so in this case, we have transaction date, we have branch ID, we have IATA number, and we have customer ID. Well, I don't necessarily need IATA number because my environment only has, I'm looking at my US client, so I've got my US IATA numbers. I don't need to necessarily search by that, but I can. In my customer ID, I can say in list down here at the bottom, and it would allow me to then pick from the list of valid customer IDs within my system. So I can use the same levels of functionality that we have a browser in the desktop application to be able to search. So in this case, if I say like, it would prompt me, or I could say now, if I pull this drop down, I want to say prompt me for a customer ID. Now when I say view result, it prompts me for the customer that I'm looking for. So it allows me to do that. Now, one of the things I do want to point out here is this is a type ahead screen. If I start to put in 110, for example, it will start to filter my list of customers based on that same information. If I start to type something here, TER, okay, it will filter based on the name of that customer that I'm looking for. So if you have the customer number or you have the customer name, as soon as you start typing in there, it will help you find the information that you're looking for. So that's the type ahead. That's also the ability, when you drop this down, to prompt for something. Is this a mandatory field? Or are we going to use a macro? Now, I'm going to take off my prompt here. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say, I'm going to use a macro. And my macro says, I want to do the today plus or minus, and I'm going to say minus 300 days. So now this macro allows me to put in a default transaction date from today minus 300 days. So I want to look at the last 300 days. Okay. If I say view result, it's going to start and it's going to pull up information based on, and again, I'm in a demo environment, so I'm looking at a very select or small set of data. Okay. But if I want to go in and now go back and change criteria, and in addition to say, let's look at the last 90 days, okay? So if I'm going to change this macro and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to always default to today minus 30 days, okay? So my default search is going to be the last 30 days of information, but I also want to say prompt for it. So I'm using the macro, but then I'm also going to prompt. When I say view result, the macro will put in the date of 30 days ago. But because I'm prompting for it, I could also say 01/01/2022. When I tab off of that, it'll populate the date. Again, these fields, if you're working in the web, the typing functionality works. If I say 01/01 and tab off of that, it'll put in January 1st of this year. If I say 01/31, it puts in January 31st of this year. If I say 17, it puts in the 17th day of this month. So those typing functionality or those typing rules that apply to that date field will apply to the date field in the web as well. So if I say 01, it puts in March 1st, 2025, because that's the first day of the current month. Okay. If I say 02/01, February 1st, 2025. So just knowing that you don't always have to go to a calendar and go back through the number of years or go back to, a drop down where you pick a year, you can type it in, right? So I want to say 01/01/2022. Tab off of that and click OK. This will pull up all of my transactions that I have in the system for January 1st, 2022. Okay, so the filtering of the data, that search criteria allows us to be able to pick the fields that we want to be able to use and set up. Again, we're going to touch on this. We're going to set up, we can prompt for it. We can set something as mandatory. You have to put a date in here. We can use a macro. And if we're using between, the macro would prompt us from a from and to date. So it does allow you, based on the search criteria that we're doing, it does prompt you for the information in the fields that you're putting in here. Now, let's go in here. We're going to go back in. We're going to say, again, my 01012022, and I'm going to click OK. And it's going to pull my list of data. It's going to pull up my information for this report that I've started to create. Across the top of the screen here is where we're going to see our headers that we've chosen for our information. Now, I'm looking at this report. I want to make some changes to it. It doesn't give me everything that I'm looking for. So I'm going to pull my drop down here. And instead of just having carrier code out here, I'm going to come down to where I see my carrier code. And it's probably in my ticket information. Let's see here. Where's it? Carrier code. Sorry, carrier code right here. And I'm going to say also give me the text of the carrier code. So now when it reloads this data for me, I'm not only going to have the carrier code here, but I'm also going to have the carrier name that's associated with that carrier code. So I can look at this information. I can start to move things around. I can start to work with it. If this is going to be a carrier report, I may want to take this and put it over here in front of the ticket number. I want to take the carrier name and put it over here on the ticket number. Okay. I can pick and remove fields if I want to. If I got my customer number, okay. Now I want to take customer number and I'm going to drag it up here to my sort box. Okay. So now if I come in here and say, now what I've done here is I'm sorting and subtotaling by my customer number. Okay. So let's see, it's should be thinking for me here. Okay, okay, there we go. So now you can see I've got my customer ID here. Okay, so it's sorted by customer number. If I pull this up, if I make it, so now you can see that each customer number that I have, it's showing me a subtotal by customer. By bringing this up here, I'm sorting it and grouping it by customer ID. Okay, now if I go into the box that says sort and group by, it gives me some additional criteria. Okay, I don't want to see it extended. I want to see it collapsed. Okay, and click OK. This is going to refresh my data. And it's going to pull it in and give me a subtotal report by customer for all of those transactions for that one day that we're looking at. And here, I'm going to go back up here. Instead of saying code, I want to show text. I'm going to click OK. So now my report, instead of having customer ID with the number there, it'll have the customer ID and then it'll display the name of that customer. Okay, so now I've displayed it by name. I do have the customer ID, and my subtotal amount is on the subtotal line here. If I go back in and I group it again, okay, I'm going to change this up a little bit more. I'm going to do code and text, okay. I want to value in footer. That's why we see this footer down here. So value in footer. I'm sorting ascending. I'm going to say this is going to be expanded. And then underneath this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab the carrier code. And I'm going to group by carrier code. And I'm going to sort ascending by carrier code. I'm going to group by carrier code. I want the text, and I'm going to say this is going to be collapsed. So now, because I've added that second sort and subtotal here, when I click on this OK, now underneath the customer ID, I'm going to show a collapsed view of all of the carriers that are underneath that customer. So now you can start to see how we're going to be pulling this report information into this screen, being able to display this information. Okay, so it allows us to, again, I could still go in and say, okay, these are just vendor transactions. Maybe I don't want to show vendor transactions. I could get rid of them if I wanted to by changing the criteria here. If I say where I come down to ticket information, and I want to come down to vendor. And I want to say, okay, for vendor, and I'm going to say vendor is no value. So the terminology here is important, okay? So in the desktop client, this would say empty, right? Or not empty. This is no value or any value, right? So I'm going to now view my results. Same thing. I'm going to go grab that one day and click OK. So now instead of starting my report with the customer number and a list of transactions that have no carrier code, this will be where the vendor code is empty. I'm looking for only my ARC and BSP carriers on this report. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here. I'm going to click Save. Now, we talked about where do we want to save this report. So if we looked back at our menu, we'll go back to the menu in a minute. But if we wanted to look at this, this is going to be a ARC carrier by customer. Okay. Now, under the central command menu, I said we have a shared, we have private, we have across companies. If I click shared and put it into my list of shared reports here, this is only going to be available in my US client because that's where I'm building this report. So if I put it into my underneath that top level menu, if I go into the shared, I'm sharing it within the client I'm building the report in. If I come in to across companies and I click on shared, then I'm going to call this folder Global Reports. And I'm going to save it into my shared across companies global reports. So if I'm in Central Command in my US client, that's ST, okay? I come down to reports, go into across companies. I probably have to refresh this menu first. So now I'm going to go back to Central Command. This is my refresh button right here at the top. I know we've talked about that before. I'm going to go into across companies, shared, global reports, ARC carrier by report. It's going to prompt me, okay? So I'm going to view the results. It's going to prompt me for my date. And I'm able to run that report. When this populates, it gives me my values. Now, if I come up to my Canadian client, sorry about that. So if I'm in my Canadian client now, and I go to Central Command, into reports, across companies, shared, global reports. So now I have that same report that I've created for customers or for carriers by customer. I can now use it in not only the US client, but I can use it in the Canadian client, my SA client as well. So that's where, when you're creating a global report off of an object within the web environment, and you want to publish it so anyone can use it across any of your business units, that's the way we do it here. Okay? Excuse me, hold on one second. Wow, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to come back over to my US client again, my ST client. I've got my report here. I want to take this and I'm going to say export it. If I go to that export button and I have the report engine set up correctly, I'm going to see that I can take this data out to an Excel spread, an Excel report. I could drop it into a PDF file. So this is very much like a browser when I want to, go up to that reports button at the top of the screen on the desktop, and I want to be able to pull that in. I'm going to click this. The thing you'll notice here on the web, though, is it's not going to automatically open Excel on my screen. What it's going to do is it's going to drop it into my downloads folder here. Once it drops it into that downloads folder, that's where I can come in and I can, sorry about that, let me bring it up here. So now I've got it so I can see that let me enable editing. So I opened it in Excel. I'm going to click on the level 3 down, and I can see all of my air carriers. I can see how it's broken out by customer and then separated by air carrier. If I go down to that detail level, now I can get down to that detail level as well. It keeps all of the formatting for me that I set up in that object of that report. And when I export it, it keeps that information so that I can use the sorts and subtotal functionality within Excel. Now, here's the other thing we're going to do. I'm going to close this. Not going to save it. Instead of taking it out to Excel specifically, just a one-time, one-off, open it in Excel, send it to my downloads, and I can view it and email it to a customer. I want to do something that's a little different. I want to go ahead and I want to create the report like I would from if I wanted to do something where I wanted to have my logo on it, I want to have the parameters just like any other accelerator type report. When I click on, let me open this up. When I click on Design New, it drops into my downloads folder the Unit4 Report Engine Creation report. So now it's taken the data and it has now dropped in all of the fields, all of the columns, everything that I want this report to be, right? Taking it from that object. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create using this. It's going to open my Excel spreadsheet. This is where, if I go up to my accelerator and I load the current sheet, this is going to give me that breakdown and all of the look and view of exactly what I'm seeing here. So I have the ability to configure this as a report to go out to a customer. If I was going to do a break column on it, I wanted to separate each one of those customer numbers into their own tab so that I can email them out individually. We can do all of that using the reporting features of the Unit4 report engine. Okay, so I'm going to save this. I'm going to close it. Now it's created by ARC Carrier by customer report. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a file save. Okay, again, it saved it into my downloads directory here. Okay, I'm going to close that. Now I'm going to import it. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to open it. And it's going to say it's been imported. I'm going to close this. Now, if I'm in this report and I go to my export button, what you see is now it's got that formatted report, that formatted accelerator report attached to the report that I'm running in CentralCommand. So just like we have in the desktop application, the same features, the same functionality that you have, you can bring into the web environment as well. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about some features here before we move away from the creation of this report. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other features that we have on this report builder. We're going to go back over to our list of columns. At the bottom of the columns, we have expressions, just like you have in the desktop, right? So you can come in here, you can start to create an expression. If I click new at the bottom, I'm going to now, here's my expression. The name is going to be we're going to do something simple. I'm going to say match carrier. Okay, this is going to be if the carrier is AA, then 1. So all I'm going to do is create my expression that says if. I'm going to open the if, and I'm going to say if the carrier code is equal to AA, then 1, else 0. Very simple expression. Okay, I don't want to go too crazy here. Data type is going to be an integer. Okay, that means a full number because it's a 1 I want to put in there. Okay, and I'm going to click OK. Do I not have any? Let's see here. Oh, because of the result. Go 1, 1, go 2, 2. And so now what I should have here is at the top of this report, I should have a column that is my matched or my count, if you will. Okay, so match carrier here, if it's American Airlines, and I go into here, there my expression said if it was American Airlines, AA, then put a 1 in that column. So by adding that expression to this report, it allows me to do just the same things. If we're doing a hotel segment report and we want to say the number of nights times the number of hotel nights times the number of rooms times the rate amount gives us our estimated trip cost, for example. That's what we can do with this. We can build that expression into the report just like we can on a browser inside of the desktop application. So that is one feature there. Trying to think. So the other thing is a lot of customers, agencies, will have things like, I'm going to look at my customer numbers, but I want to group them into certain reportable categories. When we have that type of relation, we want to be able to use that in this report as well. So if I go from customer ID, if I click this little arrow button to the right, this will actually take me down and say, okay, here are my relations. Okay, I want to pull my relation in customer group. So when you see this little arrow to the right, that is more about creating relations on that information. Okay, so by looking at that, you can see that branch ID might have relations on it. So we said, okay, here are my relations on my branches in my environment. So it allows us not only to create expressions, it also allows us to use the relations on attributes to pull that information into the reports. So just as a recap here, I know we're getting close and I want one more thing because I want to go in and I want to talk a little bit about what you got published in the desktop and how do we get it to the web. So before I do that, just as a recap says, first, system administration, giving object access to the people who are going to be building the reports. We want to make sure that the role that they have, if I go into CentralCommand, objects, the role has to be assigned access to be able to report off that environment, that different set of objects. That's the first thing. The second thing is understanding that when we're in CentralCommand and we are in reports, setting up a shared report is shared within this one business unit. Sharing it across companies allows us to use that same report across the entire Unit4 ERP environment. So it could be a single client, it could be 5 clients. All of them would have that same report structure available to them. Now, if I go into my common environment and I come into reports under my common environment, okay? Here, wait a minute, where am I? Shared. Sorry, give me 1 second. And my mind just blanked on me. I've been working in this all morning, and I apologize about this. So let me see here. So we got my reports. And I have just blanked. I'm going to show you this because when we want, I'm in the desktop application. I'm sorry, I'll get back there in a second. I just, for the life of me. So if we were going to come in and we're going to look at this P&R lookup, and we want to see this P&R lookup, a browser that we created here, and we want to publish this browser to the web, okay? So to do that, what we have to do is we're going to go under the reports folder here in your CentralCommand environment for that client. You're going to see a folder here. We've got global reports. Underneath travel reports, we've got customer reports, detailed travel info, P&R lookup. By placing this report into this report structure, so it cannot be published directly from this menu, you have to save this report to the structured reports menu here. And with that, we're able to go in and do P&R lookup. So if I click on this, it will allow me to publish that report from, let me go back up here real quick. You can see this is in reports, global reports, travel, customer, right? So it's taking me, what it's doing is in this setup, when we publish it from the desktop into that report structure, by putting that in, we can get into this reports, and it is, did I put it here? Reports. It's not in CentralCommand. Think. I'm going to have to come back and give you a quick update on this because I have lost it, or I turned off my access to it here while I was getting some final prepping done this morning. So this is where you're able to, again, you can obviously still see I have access to that report. It's exactly the same report that I created in the desktop app. So if I open this report up here, this is the same browser structure that I'm going to see across the top of the screen here. Now, notice the one difference is here you don't have that same ability to do the prompting and things like that here. So yes, it prompts me for the P&R locator, but it doesn't allow me to go in and set it so that I have a default date. It doesn't allow me to do some of the other criteria, creation criteria around being able to display that information and be able to, prompt or set defaults here on this screen. So with that, I've gone a little bit over my 5 minutes. So Bailey, I'm keeping an eye on the clock. I want to know, do we have any questions right now?
We do have a question, and for the rest of the group that's maybe being a bit shy, or if they've got any questions to ask, feel free to be dropping those in the chat box or the Q&A box now. But our first question is, can you show how to add a ticket count by airline in addition to that dollar amount by airline?
Sure. So if I go back into my report, I'm going to open the report back up here. And I'm going to come down to my selection criteria here. Okay. If I come down to my, is it under amounts? And it's not the amounts. There are two ways that we could do this. Ticket information. I'm just looking to see if the field that I'm expecting here. So the field that we would use in CentralCommand is called ad count, right? So in this case, what I want to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a new expression here. Okay. And I'm going to say this is just going to be count. Okay. And I'm going to put a 1 there. And I'm going to make this a full integer number, right? And I'm going to say, yes, it's got a running total. And okay, it'll have, and click OK. So if I now view the result, prompt for it again, and click OK, what this will do is my last column out here on the end will be a count. It's going to be that because I'm doing only, non-vendor airline tickets here, I'm going to see by each carrier displayed, that last column will give me a subtotal of the number of rows that I have subtotaled there. So this American Airlines has 15 invoice items there, 16 on Alaska, 18 on JetBlue. And then what I've got is, should have given me my running total, but I'd have to look at that. So it didn't give me my running total. That's why. So, oh, sorry, this is running total. Let me change that up a little bit. That's why. My apologies. Expressions. And so here I want to say running total is going to be no. Okay, has some, and it's going to be a vertical sum. And I'm going to click OK. That's what this did. So 15 plus 1 is 16 plus 2 is 18 plus. So this was the running total column that I had set. Now I'm just going to do a count by each airline, and it should give me the total down here on the subtotal line. There we go. So 15, 1, 2, 13, 9 gives me a total of 40. Does that make sense?
I'm going to assume that answered the question.
Yes.
I got to thank you in the chat. So perfect. Yes,
I see that.
Waiting. Another question. Is there a way to protect specific public browsers used for production reporting from being changed by users who have access to browser creation?
Yes. you can give, so when you're giving access, so in that role, let's go back over here and we go into Central Command Administration. We're going into menu access. Okay. So under menu access, if I come down to Central Command and I go into reports and I go into shared reports, if Mr. Eldridge only gets to read-only access to that information, we can set it so that he has read-only access to everything in that folder. He can't change anything. Okay, so it is based on either a role. So at the, if we go into a system role and give that system role read access, right? You wouldn't do it at a system level, but I might have it at, a travel, agent role. So if I've got agents who are using the web portal to see information that they want to be able to look up on their transactions, in the web, you can set that role that they have read-only access. So absolutely. Okay.
Okay. I don't see any other questions right now. Oh, I got another good thumbs up. I guess one question just coming off of, I know we focused on the central command side of things, but for maybe some of our finance users, is it a similar process around doing financial reporting?
Exactly the same process. So if you go into reports, I'm showing that on the screen. Thanks, Bail. To reports, create new report. Notice that at the top of the screen, hold on. Sorry about that. My internet went crazy for a second. So if you look at the top of this screen, if I go into, on the menu, if I go into reports underneath the accounting module, when I go into create a new report, it goes to the objects that are available under the accounting module. So again, these are predefined objects that have been set up in the accounting module, or if you're in any of the other modules, there are specific, there are specific different objects that are available in each one of these units. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Excellent.
And then the last question so far is for me about how to access the recording. So right after this meeting, we'll publish the recording. So if you're on here, you register, you're going to be sent a link to watch it from the Microsoft Teams kind of webinar format. And then I'm going to work on loading that into our YouTube site. And then I provide those links out in our newsletter. So I will go ahead and get that also mailed out so that you guys can pass on all this great information to anybody else that's jumping in the system and needing to create these reports. Any other questions? If not, we'll give everybody their 2 minutes, maybe 1 minute back in their day. And we're really grateful that you came on. Stay tuned. We're working on trying to shape up what our spring topics are going to be. So be on the watch for those as we're going to work on trying to get those published soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Thanks.